Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we will begin a new lesson, section 6-2, relating fractions, decimals, and percents. If you haven't taken your 6-1 quiz yet, you need to make that up right away. Okay, let's get started with today's key concept. Today's key concept states you can use division and equivalent ratios to express fractions, decimals, and percents in equivalent forms. We'll move on to the example. This 100 frame has 75 units shaded in. That's 75 out of a total 100. So you have your part at the top, that which is shaded in, out of the total, which includes the shaded in units and the units that are not shaded. That is equal to 75 hundredths as a decimal. When you divide by 100, you are moving a decimal to the left 2 places. So if you have your 75, your decimal would be here because it's like 75.0. And division, when you're dividing by 100, your number is going to get smaller. So we're going to move it 2 places to the left. And that's how you got this decimal 0.75. 75 out of 100. It can also be written as 75%. All 3 of those forms are equivalent. Over here, they're showing you that the whole part, which represents 100% or 1, is shaded gray. Underneath it, this lighter shaded gray box, you see that 75% is part of a whole, or this 0.75, which is 75 hundredths. So it's about 3/4 the size of the whole thing. Next, we'll move to the do you understand questions. Please write down all information shown in these sections. You will be required at the end of this video to submit a picture of your notes to aherring@sberg.org. Okay, question number 1. How are fractions, decimals, and percents related? I'm going to read my answer and then give you a few moments to write it down. Fractions, decimals, and percents describe parts of a whole. A whole, or 100% of something, is represented by just the number 1. And 75 out of 100 is less than 1. We know, if you're thinking in terms of money, that 75 cents is less than $1, which would be 1.00. And 75% is less than 100%, which would be the whole. So fractions, decimals, and percents describe parts of a whole. Number 2. Why do you use a denominator of 100 when you write a percent as a fraction? A percent compares a number to 100. Please write that down. When working with percentages and setting up a fraction, the denominator is always 100. And that's even when percents are larger than 100%, because you're always going to compare back to the whole thing or the original, which is 100%. And we get more into very large percents in the 7th grade content, and we will discuss this a lot further then. Okay, number 3, look for relationships. How do you use the digits in a hundredths decimal to write a percent? Put the tenths and hundredths digit in the tens and ones places in the percent. Take a moment, write that down, and then I'll give you an example. Okay, so if you have a hundredths decimal, so you have a digit in the hundredths place, so we'll use this 75 hundredths. Okay, so the 7 is in the tenths place, and the 5 is in the hundredths place. All we're going to do is write the digit that's in the tenths place in the tens place in our percentage, and the digit that's in the hundredths place will go in the ones place, okay, of our percentage. So basically, these two digits to the right of the decimal become your percentage when writing it as a percent. Okay, number 4. How do you write a fraction with a denominator of 20 as a decimal? You are going to multiply the numerator and denominator by 5 to write an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. Then write the equivalent fraction as a decimal. Take a moment, write that down, and then I will give you an example. So if you have 4 out of 20, you can multiply the top and bottom by 5. And the reason we chose 5 is because we want to make the denominator 100. 20 times 5 is 100. Do the same to the top. 4 times 5 is 20. You get 20 out of 100. And if you remember what we covered under the key concept at the top, whenever you divide by 100, you are simply moving the decimal, which would be here to the right, 2 places to the left. So you would get 0.20, which is 20 hundredths, or you could just, leave off the 0 on the end and make it 2/10. So that could be or 2/10. Either of these are acceptable. Okay, now we're going to move on to the do you know section. In questions 5 through 7, you're going to write each number in equivalent forms using the 2 other forms of notation, fraction, decimal, or percent. Question number 5 just has 27%. So we're given the percent. We need to write this as a fraction and a decimal. 27% is representing the part of the whole, and the whole is 100. Okay, so 27% can also be read as 27 out of 100. So the fraction is 27 over 100. The decimal equivalent, again, dividing by 100, you move the decimal 2 places to the left, and you get 27 hundredths. Okay, let me show you example number 6, and I will ask you to take a moment and try question number 7 on your own. Question number 6 reads 91 hundredths. You say the number that you see, and then you name the place value of the last digit. So I see the number 91. The last digit is the 1, and that's in the hundredths place. So this is 91 hundredths. This would be 91 out of 100. I said hundredths, so I need to have 100 in the denominator position. Any number out of 100, the top number I should say, would be your percentage. So 91% is the third form for that question. Question number 7, they give you the fraction. So you need to give me the decimal equivalent and the percent equivalent. Take a moment and try that one on your own. The operation shown in a fraction is division. And if you think about it, a fraction looks like a division symbol. You have the bar in the middle here, and you have a number on the top and the bottom, which is sort of like the dot in the top and the bottom of my division symbol. So whenever you see a fraction, the operation is division. 6 divided by 100 is easy because when you divide by 100, you're moving a decimal 2 places to the left. So if we place our decimal here to the right of the 6, because 6 is a whole number, we're going to go ahead and move it 2 places to the left. There's this empty spot here. You can fill in a 0 as a placeholder, and the decimal equivalent of 6 over 100 is 0.06. So we got the decimal. The percent would just be the top number as long as the denominator is 100. This is 6%. Question number 8. Greek yogurt has 25% of the calcium that most people need in a day. What is 25% as a decimal? Again, if they give you a percentage with the percent symbol, it can read 25 out of 100. So this percent symbol is out of 100. So if I write it how it sounds, 25 out of 100 is my fraction. To convert it to a decimal, which is what we're asked to do, we can just move that decimal 2 places to the left. So the decimal equivalent is 25 hundredths. Finally, question number 9. Linda received 4/5 of the vote in the election for Student Council President. What percent of the votes did Linda receive? There are 2 ways to solve this. One is the book way, and the second way is the way that I learned it, but also the way that the 7th grade, when we get to the 7th grade content, we'll focus more on, okay? So the first strategy would be to take your 4/5 and set that equal to 100, because when you have a number out of 100, the number on the top in your numerator position is your percentage, okay? And this works really well when the denominator in the original fraction is a factor of 100. So 5 goes into 20 evenly 20 times, okay? So since we know we need to multiply the denominator by 20, we're going to multiply the numerator by 20, and we get 80 out of 100. And since this is really a division problem here in this fraction, we can move the decimal 2 places to the left, and we get our decimal equivalent, okay, which is 0.80 or 80 hundredths, which can also be written as 80 tenths. Since this 0 is all the way on the end of a decimal, you don't technically have to write it, although both are correct. Okay, and then the other way, which you may have already learned, we can take this 4/5, okay, and use long division to find our decimal equivalent that way. Okay, once we have our decimal equivalent, we can then, we would be here, then we could identify the percentage. Okay, so when you have a fraction, one little trick that I like to show students is the doom cloud. Sort of a joke, because my students tend to not like fractions in 7th grade. So if you see a scary fraction and you're not sure what to do, draw the little doom cloud on top, and that will help you know where to place the 4 and the 5 in your long division problem. I call this a division house. Okay, so if you think about the rain, you got the 4 on the top. The 4 is the number that is getting wet. You want to go ahead and put the 4 inside. Okay, so the numerator is always going to go inside, and it just so happens that the numerator is the smaller number. So we will be dividing a larger number into a smaller number. And that's where division gets very confusing. Students always want to put their bigger number inside when they're dividing. Okay, so that doom cloud really helps you to keep it straight. So the 4 is getting that. That's because the 5 is currently with that little bar there, picture, underneath cover, whether it's a roof or an umbrella, whatever. The 4 is the one getting wet, so you want to put the 4 inside. Okay, and then the 5 goes on the outside because that's the only place left over. Okay, so then 5 does not go into 4. Okay, so it can't be 0. Okay, we have to extend this and get our decimal. So what we're going to do is go ahead and add a decimal, and you can add as many zeros as you like to this problem. And that's because the number inside is still 4. It hasn't changed. Whether it's 4.0 or 4.00 or 4.000, the number inside is still 4. We did not change the problem in any way. We just extended it with these zeros so that we could continue our problem. Okay, now this decimal needs to come up. And now we can continue. So we already went into the 4, didn't work. Now we can go into 40. So 5 goes into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. And we get a terminating decimal. Okay, so we didn't even need these extra. We only needed 1 0. Okay, we got our 0 here. We're finished with a problem. We also get this 0.8, which is the same we got here. So this seems to take a little bit longer. Why would we do that? Well, because when working with a percent, what if this was a 7 here? What if this was 4/7? There's no number you can multiply by 7, like any whole number that you can multiply by 7 to get 100. So you would have to do long division to get the decimal. Once you have the decimal, then you can identify the percent as well. So here, any number out of 100, the numerator tells you your percentage. Here, if you do the long division and you get a decimal, you can just go the other way, okay, 2. So 1, 2, you place a 0 here, and that would give you 80%, which was our goal. Okay, so we'll do that method definitely more as we get into the 7th grade content. But if you're familiar with that strategy already, then, perhaps that's the way you want to go. But definitely, if you have a number that goes into is a factor of 100, this is the quicker method, okay? Because you would just multiply quick, get your number out of 100, and that's your percentage. Okay, at this time, please take your camera either on your Chromebook or your cell phone, take a picture of your work, and send it to me in an email. If you have any questions, let me know, and we will work together to iron it all out. Have a great day.